The story goes like this. A penniless genius tears up a contract worth a fortune to save the friend who believed in him. Then he dies, broke and forgotten in a New York hotel room, mourned by no one but the pigeons he fed on the windowsill. Almost every piece of that is exaggerated, wrong, or hiding something stranger. Nikola Tesla was not forgotten. So what actually happened to him? Here's the first thing the legend gets wrong. In 1931, 12 years before he died, Tesla was on the cover of Time magazine. When he died in 1943, more than 2,000 people packed a Manhattan cathedral for his funeral. Edwin Armstrong, the inventor of FM radio, was a pallbearer. 3 Nobel laureates in physics, Robert Millikan, Arthur Compton, and James Franck, sent tributes. This is not a man history erased. Which raises a harder question. If he wasn't forgotten, why do we tell his story as if he was? Because we've quietly replaced the man with a myth, and the myth is a saint. So this is the documented record against the version you've been sold, told through the 3 tragedies that actually broke him: the money he lost, the mind that isolated him, and the science that slowly turned against him. Start with the money. The money first, because it's the tragedy people think they understand, and the one they get most wrong. In 1888, George Westinghouse bought Tesla's polyphase AC patents and the broader system that would go on to electrify the modern world. The deal? $60,000 up front, plus a royalty of $2.50 for every unit of AC capacity sold. Read that again. A fee on every AC motor Westinghouse sold, as those motors spread into every factory, streetcar, and power plant in the country. The proof of what that system could do came in 1895, when Westinghouse and Tesla's AC generators powered the Niagara Falls hydroelectric plant, the largest in the world at that moment. The moment that ended the debate over which current would win. On paper, that one royalty clause would have made Tesla among the richest men who ever lived. He never collected it. And here's where the legend takes over. The popular version is cinematic. Years later, Westinghouse is drowning in debt, comes to Tesla in despair, and Tesla, out of pure loyalty, tears the royalty contract to shreds on the spot, waving away a fortune to save his friend. It's a beautiful scene. It's also mostly the invention of one biographer, John J. O'Neill, in his 1944 book, Prodigal Genius, inflated by everyone who copied him since. Here's what the record shows. Around 1890, with Westinghouse's company genuinely near collapse, Westinghouse asked Tesla to release him from the royalty clause. Tesla agreed. No sledgehammer, no torn paper, a decision. Then, in 1897, those royalties were formally bought out for a lump sum of $216,000. So the myth says he theatrically destroyed billions. The record says he quietly gave up a claim that might have compounded into an immense fortune and took a fraction of it in cash. The theatrics are fake. The sacrifice is real. Electrification became the largest industry on Earth, and the man whose motor made it possible owned none of it. Hold that thought. The man who walked away from the money, because it pays off later in a way the myth never tells you. But the lost royalty wasn't the wound that finished him. That was the tower. By 1900, Tesla wanted to transmit not just messages, but power, electricity itself, wirelessly, across the entire planet. To build it, he went to the most powerful banker alive, J.P. Morgan. And this is the biggest myth of all, that Morgan funded him, realized Tesla was about to give the world free energy, and killed the project to protect his monopolies. The documents tell a smaller, more human story. In 1901, Morgan gave Tesla $150,000, $50,000 more than Tesla asked for a wireless telegraphy station in exchange for 51% of the patents. A business deal. The tower itself, 187 feet tall, crowned with a 55-ton copper dome, was designed by Stanford White, one of the most celebrated architects in America. White would be shot dead in 1906 at Madison Square Garden in what became the most sensational murder trial of the era. His name is on the blueprints of a project that never finished, and then history swallowed him too. But before any of that, Tesla quietly changed the project. Without telling his investor, he rescaled it from sending messages to broadcasting power. A vastly larger, vaguer, more expensive dream. When Tesla came back for more money, Morgan simply declined to keep funding a project that was no longer the one he'd bought. Not suppression, risk management. We know this because Tesla himself praised Morgan's generosity in his own autobiography in print. So the tower at Wardenclyffe was never finished. It was foreclosed and sold for scrap. And while Tesla chased the perfect, someone else shipped the good enough. On December 12, 1901, while Wardenclyffe stood half-built, an Italian named Marconi sent a single Morse letter, the letter S, across the Atlantic. 2,000 miles, on gear that cost a sliver of Tesla's tower. Tesla was building a cathedral to wireless. Marconi did it with a kite. The patent battles that followed eventually went to the Radio Corporation of America, which held Marconi's patents. And it wasn't until 1943, the year Tesla died, that the US Supreme Court finally ruled Tesla's wireless patents had priority. He never knew. That's the real institutional tragedy. Not a conspiracy, not a theft. A visionary who kept redrawing the blueprint until the money ran out, beaten by a pragmatist who finished. He lost the royalty and the tower for the same reason. He could not stop reaching past what he'd already won, which is precisely the trait that was about to destroy the rest of his life. The mind that couldn't stop reaching outward couldn't stop counting inward either. Tesla did everything in threes. He circled a building 3 times before he'd walk in. He swam 33 laps. He insisted on a hotel room number divisible by 3. He died in suite 3,327. Before every meal, he calculated the volume of his food, and he needed 18 napkins on the table. 18 because it divides by 3. He boiled his water, wore gloves, refused to shake hands. Modern clinicians reading the record describe textbook obsessive-compulsive disorder. And here, the honest version corrects a favorite myth. You'll hear that Tesla couldn't bear to touch anything round, couldn't stand a woman wearing pearls. The pearls are true. The rest is inflated. He spent his whole life cradling coils, spheres, and glowing glass bulbs. The real compulsion was narrower and stranger than the cartoon, which, by now, is the pattern with almost everything about this man. But the counting and the gloves did something crueler than make him eccentric. They walled him off. Tesla never married. "I do not think," he once said, "you can name many great inventions that have been made by married men." He kept people at arm's length his entire life, with a handful of exceptions. Katherine Johnson, wife of the poet Robert Underwood Johnson, was one of the closest friends he ever allowed himself. They corresponded for decades. She was one of the few people he seems to have genuinely trusted. But even that warmth lived mostly on paper. He poured the affection he couldn't give people into the pigeons of New York. He left his hotel windows open so they could nest in his room. He fed them, nursed the sick ones, and fixed on one in particular, a white female with gray-tipped wings. Listen to how he described her to his biographer near the end. "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose in my life." One night around 1922, she flew in through the window to die. Tesla said that as she passed, 2 beams of blinding light shot from her eyes, brighter, he swore, than anything he had ever built. Almost certainly it was something happening inside his own exhausted mind, but he believed it completely. And he said that when the bird died, something went out of him, and he knew his life's work was finished. Which brings us back to the money, and the loop the legend leaves open. The story you've been told is that Tesla died exactly as lonely as he lived, broke, abandoned, forgotten in a hotel room under a pile of unpaid bills. The bills were real. The abandonment wasn't. Remember the fortune he walked away from, the royalties he released when Westinghouse was drowning. From 1934, Westinghouse, the company, quietly began paying his rent, and $125 a month on top of it. They dressed it up as a consulting fee because they knew he was too proud to take charity. The man who gave up his claim on the company he helped build was, in the end, quietly carried by it. He was isolated. He was not abandoned. And in those last years, cared for, alone, in a room full of birds, Tesla never stopped working. The problem was what the work had started to become. Here's what makes the ending hard to write. Before the science turned on him, Tesla saw further than almost anyone alive. In 1926, sitting for a Collier's magazine interview, published under the title, "When Woman is Boss," he described the future with a precision that stops you cold. One day, he said, wireless would turn the whole Earth into a single brain. We'd see and hear each other across thousands of miles as if face to face, and the instrument that let us do it would be small enough to carry in your vest pocket. He described the smartphone. In 1926, that prediction is real, verified, correctly his. And years earlier, alone in a lab in Colorado, funded in part by John Jacob Astor IV, one of the wealthiest men in America, who would later die aboard the Titanic, Tesla had heard something no human had heard before. Faint, rhythmic signals arriving from the sky. He was convinced they were a message from Mars. He was wrong about Mars, but he was right that the signals were real. He had almost certainly detected radio emissions from Jupiter's moons, becoming, by accident, one of the first humans to hear deep space. So when the legend says he was ahead of his time, sometimes genuinely he was. Hold on to that. Because it's what makes what happened next a tragedy instead of a punchline. As Tesla aged, the same trait that cost him the tower, the refusal to stop reaching past what he could prove, stopped serving him. It started replacing his science with faith. He announced he had disproven Einstein, calling relativity a beggar wrapped in purple whom ignorant people take for a king. He claimed he'd measured cosmic particles moving at 50 times the speed of light. Impossible. He said he'd completed a grand new theory of gravity. He never published it. No manuscript has ever been found. The death ray he promised in his final years, the weapon that could drop 10,000 aircraft, never advanced past a paper proposal. The man who had once outmeasured his rivals was now just asserting and asking the world to believe. And in 1935, that untethered certainty produced something genuinely dark. In an article for Liberty magazine, Tesla laid out his vision for the year 2100, and it was eugenics. He wrote that pity had let humanity keep breeding the unfit, and that the remedy was sterilization. The year 2100 will see eugenics universally established. No one, he wrote, who was not a desirable parent should be permitted to have children. Sit with the irony because it's unbearable. A man with severe, lifelong mental illness, a man his own era would have filed under unfit, calmly proposing that people like him be bred out of existence. This is the beat the saint story can never include. It's not that Tesla was a monster. Eugenics was disturbingly mainstream in 1935, endorsed by respected scientists and statesmen and even the US Supreme Court. That's exactly why it matters. The myth needs him pure, a gentle genius too good for a cruel world. The record gives us a real one. Brilliant, broken, capable of foresight that reached a century ahead, and capable, in the same decade, of this. You don't get one without the other. The saint is a subtraction. And that subtraction is the actual crime, not committed by the government or by Edison or by Morgan, committed by us. So go back to where we started. The penniless genius, the torn contract, the man forgotten by everyone but the pigeons. The contract was never torn. He made a quieter, realer sacrifice. He wasn't forgotten. He was on the cover of Time and buried before 2,000 people. He wasn't abandoned. The company he gave up his fortune for paid his way to the end. Nearly every tragic beat you've been handed is either softened, inflated, or false. So where did the saint come from? Not from 1943. From us. From the 2010s. A viral comic. A car company that borrowed his name and made him a household face again. A crowd-funded museum. We took a complicated, contradictory, occasionally troubling man, and we sanded him into a martyr the establishment supposedly destroyed. It's a good story. It's just not his. Here's the harder truth. The real Tesla gave away a fortune and let himself be quietly rescued by it. He loved a pigeon and predicted your phone. He heard Jupiter's moons and thought it was Mars. He was a genius who slowly stopped being right, and a visionary who wrote one of the ugliest sentences of his century. He is so much more interesting than the saint we built to replace him. We didn't forget Nikola Tesla. We replaced him with a saint, and the real man was the more interesting one all along. If this changed how you see him, subscribe, because the next myth we're taking apart is even bigger. There's one more myth in this story I didn't touch. The idea that Tesla single-handedly invented the system that powers your home. He didn't, and the man who arguably beat him to it, an Italian physicist history barely remembers, is the subject of the next one.